Hello, and welcome to Seeking Heaven, the Near-Death Experience and Other Phenomena. I'm your host, Tamara Caulder Richardson, an international evidential medium, ultra-dimensional channel, as well as a Syrian Celestial Starseed. Welcome to my channel, and if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, like, make comments, consider also being a member of my channel, and check out my new Ascension School, academyofdivinewisdom.com. Today's guest is Neil Gaur. He is the director of the Portal of Ascension Consciousness Event Production Company. He also is a YouTube host and a historian of esoteric wisdom, as well as a philosopher, a researcher, and a artist of words. So I want to have him on today. He's going to be talking about his spiritual journey and also our galactic history and our spiritual journey as humanity. So welcome, Neil.
Hey, Tamara, so good to be here with you.
Yes, absolutely. You too. Well, look, I keep seeing all the things that you are posting on your, and I have here the portal to ascension.org. You have events, you have conferences. I love everything that you're doing. I feel so inspired and grateful. I want people to get to know you, Neil, because how did all this happen? I mean, you had to start somewhere. And what was it that stirred in you, your spiritual journey? How did that all begin? And then, and then just take it from there.
Well, I would say, firstly, I was actually born in England. I moved to California. Now I'm kind of mobile and I live everywhere. But I was born in England. I moved to California when I was 12, and I was raised in a Hindu family. So, just a lot of rites and rituals and ceremonies and all that. And I pretty much just did what I was told. I didn't really have a firm belief system. And but I do remember always feeling that there was something off in the world, that something wasn't right. And that's something that I've talked to thousands and thousands of people about this stuff. And it seems to be a common theme of what, this isn't the way we can live, And I started, as I was growing up, I was into astronomy, different things like that. So there was a lot of things happening in my life that now looking back at it, I realized that it was just because I was connected to this greater vision of the universe and who we are within it. So when we moved to California, I went to high school over here in California, and I pretty much just continued doing what I was told, in regards to religion until I was 18. And then when I was 18, I graduated and went to Cal State Fullerton. And at that point, I started really just researching, and one thought came to my mind. The number one thought that came to my mind was, what is the root of all religion? And the reason why I had that thought was because, I was raised Hindu, but I also celebrated Christmas. I also believed in Moses. We had conversations about Jesus. And, if you aren't a really fundamental Hindu person, which, I don't even know if there exists a sect of Hinduism that is against other religions in the world. That's a part of the foundation. Because I was raised like that, I was open to all types of beliefs. And I was raised to believe that many different prophets came around the world at different times for different people. So I had this concept of that we actually could be, that all these religions probably did exist, and these different prophets were different messengers for God, And so since that was my premise, I started looking into the root of all religion, and I stumbled across the ancient Sumerian scriptures in around 2001, 2002. I was following William Henry and Jordan Maxwell. Those are two individuals that really putting out a lot of information on the Anunnaki and the Sumerians. And as I was going deeper and deeper into the awareness, I started branching off into other things and realized that as I was searching for the root of all religion, that there were scriptures that predated all the religious scriptures on the planet that had that all these other religions had pulled from. However, these scriptures were talking about, instead of God, we're talking about multiple gods, and we're actually speaking about them as if there were beings from other planets. That's where, I'll stop right there for now. That's where the evolution of all my awareness, occurred, and I started connecting the dots in regards to my own religion, and just going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, really trying to piece together how we became who we are and how we got to where we are. And I'll just add this in there. It started at that, but then as I started going deeper and deeper, it went into the galactic awareness, because I kept going further and further back.
Right.
I was trying to figure out what was the root beyond Earth.
Wow. Well, and I'm also a fan of Jordan Maxwell. And when he went through the sections in the Bible, it said gods. There were, and that is like whoa. And then when you really tear it apart, you begin to see then what are we? What are we created from? Where do we come from? So it is, and then you do there's actual research behind it and findings and evidence, just like the giant skulls that you see. So after this,
Mhm.
so tell us about your journey. I want to take up to the point about the portal to ascension, how you started. I mean, now you have this beautiful Earth star family that you've developed,
Mhm.
and which I'm really, blessed to be, a part of, and meeting you and Joan of Angels, who I think the world of. Tell us
Mm.
how that came to be.
Yeah. So in 2001, 2002, like I was saying, I was getting really deep into this information. I started writing poetry, and my poetry was like deep esoteric, about ancient history and all these things. I started researching my own poetry for more jargon, if you will, within that, within what I was trying to explain, quantum physics and things, and that started leading me down to other people like Nassim Haramein, and really getting an awareness of like deep ancient esoteric wisdom and also quantum physics. So that went up until like 2008. So there was like 7 years of deep research and spiritual expansion and meeting people. And then 2006, 7, I decided to create a Facebook group called 2012 Consciousness, Mind Evolution, and Presence. And this Facebook group was designed to just have people join and share information. And as I just said, the word 2012 was in there because there was a lot of information in regards to the Mayan calendar, and as people watching this, and it was not about the end of the world, but a shifting of ages, and the end of time was mistranslated to represent the end of all world, but the end of time just meant a different concept of time. That's a whole other podcast to get into that, right? So
Yeah.
as I was getting into this information, and I wanted more people to share. So this is when like I had my Facebook group became huge. I started a fan page. We started California chapter, New York chapter, 2006, 7, 8. And in 2008, when the market crashed, I was a financial analyst for a stockbroker. I lost my job, and I was like, deep into all this information. I went to my first open mic and I performed. And at that open mic, I met my soul family. And within a few weeks from there is when I actually changed the name from 2012 Consciousness, Mind, Evolution, and Presence to Portal to Ascension. So it was actually a dream I had that gave me the name. And I woke up and was like, whoa. So I emailed Facebook because you had to email them to change your fan page name at that point. And they changed it. Portal to Ascension was born. I started doing in 2008. I started with a hypno creativity event. Was my first event. It was binaural beats with hypnosis to unlock creative blocks, and then journaling, and then sound healing events. 2009, 2010, I hit the road, quit my job for the fourth time for Portal to Ascension, and began doing events from San Diego to Vancouver to Victoria Island, back and down for 3 years. I did around 6 tours. Started with Dr. Dream doing sound healing event tours, and ended with channeling tours from a being from Sirius with another person that I knew from Vancouver who I'd been following on YouTube for 2-3 years. So conferences, everything. This was the reason why I'm really good at producing events and looking at every single level. It
Yeah.
was, I created after these 3 years, I created thousands of events. But during these 3 years was my production skills training camp, because I quit my job. I had no money, only had gas to go from city to city. Only if I got paid enough from that city would I be able to go somewhere. Sleeping in my car, sleeping in a hotel, sleeping at people's houses. Not all based on choice, from the fact that I was so about consciousness, I would not go and work a regular job. I needed to go and get this information out.
Yeah.
So
It's hard to
during
get
those
back.
times, right, and then I had to get local venues, look for local email lists, team up with local partners to promote. So the 1,000 events literally in that like 3-year period, really, I acquired a lot of skills that I then implemented at Portal to Ascension.
Right.
Fast forward 2015, the sixth time I quit Portal to Ascension because I was like, I just need to work a regular job. This thing isn't helping me out. I need to be like, this isn't supporting me. And then I decided, well, what if I just did everything online, and I eliminated the overhead costs so I can
Yeah.
continue to work and then work a regular job while I'm doing it online. So we did that. The first online event in 2015 was called the Starseed Summit. and Dolores Cannon was one of the headliners. It was her last event she ever did.
Oh,
So my
God
first
bless her.
webinar was her last, yeah. And then and basically that event did so well, I quit my job again, and then I never worked a full-time job anywhere else besides Portal to Ascension since 2015.
Oh, well, bless you. That is wonderful news. And the fact is that it's really hard once you see enlightenment, you can't go back and hide in the closet anymore. You got to come out and do your thing. You know, it just, you have this thirst. You want to know more and more and more. So I'm just glad you took that risk, because you're allowing other star seeds like you to take a risk, to step out and actually, get out of this matrix
Yeah,
and be the love that we're created to be here and shine. So thank you for shining first, because you
yeah,
really are a trailblazer. I mean, 2015, and you're like, let's do it this way. And so now, how have you seen the group change with Portal of Ascension, with far as not only the online events? I know you're doing some in person, but have you seen the movement? I mean, it definitely looks like it's been growing, but it feels like there's something more energetic that's happening, something really big. I can feel it.
yeah. Well, in regards to what's happening with the movement and the fact that I've been doing this for a while, I have seen that this has become more and more mainstream and accepted, you know. And during this whole time when I started, like 2008 is when I started actually just doing events and everything. I've seen a rise in um, TV shows, right, on mainstream platforms that are just talking about this like it's common knowledge, right? And and some shows have different agendas than others, but the fact is that this is, if I go and talk to someone about, I just hired a bookkeeper and a virtual assistant, and I was like, what do you, my first question was, what's your thoughts on UFOs and ancient history? Because this is from Upward, this is on mainstream platform, right? And they were like talking about the TV shows that they've watched on it and how their uncle is into it, the granddad's into it. So yeah, it's definitely become more and more mainstream, and verifiable and provable. UFO government documents proving not only
Yeah.
consciousness exists, but also the cycles of time, right? Like that's a whole other ball game that I need to do a podcast on
Mhm.
specifically. The fact that they have a document speaking about that there's cycles of time, and that there's definitely civilizations, CIA document, definitely civilizations that existed on the planet that have completely been wiped out, were probably more advanced than us, and that we will never discover, So at this point, it's just like all the things that weren't verifiable then are now verifiable. And for us, maybe that doesn't matter, but for the rest of the world that need that, it does.
It does matter. And I think that there's more sightings too. I've had, since I started having all these starseed guests and I accidentally got a DNA awakening, I've
Yep.
I've seen large ones, and they're communicating and they're giving me light codes, and I'm drawing stuff and I'm doing speaking light codes. So I think that it's if we all spoke out and said, okay, I've seen it too. And also I've had a lot of near death experiencers on that will not say they've had ET experiences. They will not talk about it. I don't know
Yes.
why. And to me, it's part of that consciousness, right? Whether you awaken through a Kundalini or however it is, it's just part of that consciousness awakening state. And
Yeah.
so, but this is allowing people to step forward and to talk about all these things, not separately, but as one
Exactly.
consciousness and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
So I do feel like that it is growing, this whole movement. It's funny, we're talking
Right.
about TV shows, and we'll get on to the galactic history. One of my favorite ones, and they took it off, was People of Earth. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yeah, I
And
did. I wanted to keep going.
yeah, that was actually pretty accurate for a cute little comedy. So
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the galactic history that you do know. I know there's so much, we're going to be doing multiple parts to this because you have such a vast knowledge and research. But I want my viewers to be able to hear about, it's their history too. It's part of
Yeah.
our history. This galactic history, we are them, they are us. This is part of who we are.
That's what I'm saying. First, I want to mention what you said about the near-death experiencer thing. So I've been co-producing, basically doing all the recording equipment, everything for the IANS Association, the largest near-death experiencer association for 3
Yes.
years. So I
Yes.
produced the two events during COVID, and I just produced their last one in
You're
Salt Lake City.
kidding. You work
And
with Darren? I didn't know that. Did you
yeah,
work with
so
Darren?
Darren, I don't work with him directly. I work with Robert and I work with Jackie, who are the directors as
Okay.
well on the board.
Okay.
But so I just want to mention this that yeah, there's so Jackie is into UFOs and everything, and she's been attending my events for years. She's the one who brought me over to work with these guys because she's on the board.
Okay.
And the thing is, there's a conflict between there it's just not spoke about the ET stuff, the UFO
I
stuff.
do.
Right.
I'm
I know.
very
So
on the
there's
edge. I
a
do it.
small portion of the people into it over there, but they don't speak about it in their board meetings or bring it into this
Yes.
because the small portion of it. However, PMH Atwater, who's one of their speakers who speaks all the
Mm-hmm.
time, is
Mm-hmm.
now doing a new
Had her
book,
on.
and she's doing a book on near-death experiences that resulted in ET contact. And she's looking for
Right.
experiences. And I actually did think of you because I was at the conference while Joan was was emailing back and forth with you, and PMH Atwater is right there. So yeah, so I'm saying they're
Oh my
crossing over
gosh.
now because it's about time for us to realize a lot of times as well these beings
Man.
are ETs in disguise as
I
different
know.
gods and different things,
I know. You know what I'm thinking, Neil? I can't believe you said this. The first time saying this, but I try to really put my heart out there. I mean, this is not a dress rehearsal. It's now, so I'm just going to
Yeah,
put it out there. I used to see these little. They were humanoid black, and I thought because I didn't have understanding. I mean, I wasn't raised religious, but I was raised around Christians, but not really good ones. They didn't
yeah,
really, you know what I'm saying. We didn't really do religion much, but being from the South, but I did see these black. They had tails, they had a mouth, teeth that went all the way across, and they had red eyes. You know what? I have been thinking lately that I should get regression with like Mary Rodwell or
yeah,
Geraldine because I think they were lizard people.
yeah. You should.
So, Neil, why don't you go ahead and start uh, the foundation of what you feel is our galactic history?
Okay, yes. So what I want to do here is I really want to outline some before we get into the actual story and the drama that took place and the beings coming from one planet hybridizing themselves and all that. I want to talk about, what is hybridization? Is it even a possibility? Do we have evidence of it? Dimensions, and kind of just preface the story with this part right here. But the first thing that I would like to share is the whole concept of transitory or transitionary, fossils. Okay, in the fossil record. So we're going to start with Darwinism. Did you know that Darwinism and the theory of evolution is still considered the theory for a specific reason, right? And this is controversial here because obviously the way the duality world works, right? And everything I'm saying, including the whole word duality world, is all prefacing galactic origins and the splitting of fragmentation. We're going to get into all of that. So when we speak about the duality world, it's unfortunate many times that we go through extremes on one side or the other, but the middle ground seems to be the answer in many situations. So when it comes to Darwinism and creationism, right, we have a complete split. When we talk about creationism, it's been, unless you're into that, you've been kind of dubbed as ignorant, right? Because you only think it goes up to a certain amount of years, thousands of years ago, that we weren't here before that, dinosaurs never existed, all those things come with that. Then you have the other extreme, which is Darwinism, which is completely based on what mainstream science still calls a theory, because, and why, when will it not be a theory? Well, it won't be a theory once it's proved, right? So doesn't that mean that's not proved? Well, how can that be the case? We see the evidence of evolution, we're taught about evolution, but couple two things that we're not taught about within the evolutionary classes we take is the evolution of humans at a certain point in history and the evolution of blossoming flowers from non-blossoming flowers. And the reason why we don't talk about these two things are that there is no transitionary fossil records for flowers or I guess the plants and humans from one species to another species that both occurred around 200 to 300,000 years ago. Okay, so we have
Okay.
evolution. We see it, right? We see even the apes becoming cavemen and Neanderthals. We see some of that stuff, but then when it comes to the humans, because that's what we're talking about here, the one thing that we do not see is the transitionary fossils from Homo erectus to Homo sapien 200 to 300,000 years ago. Side note, same
True.
exact timeline as the Anunnaki story of the hybridization of humanity, right? So, do you want me to pause so you can make some comments, or should I keep going?
No, I want you to keep going. I'm with you because you're right. There is a gap. I
Yeah.
want to see how that fits in, and also the Anunnaki, as well as that whole thing with also. I'm sure you're familiar with the Book of Enoch, how that plays in, and just
Mhm.
dive right in.
Yeah. So the transitionary fossil is like, why does it matter? I'm assuming everybody listening probably already knows. Well, if we don't have like a long period of time from changing from one thing to another thing, but it happened almost overnight, but we have ancestry to this being that existed just not too long ago, it almost symbolizes that there was some sort of interference in our evolution that created a creationism aspect to ourselves, where not only were we evolving, but we were also created. Middle ground. Creationism was this, they confuse you by going to the dualistic thing where almost there's truth within everything, and that's the way it's done. It's like some truth with a lot of disinfo.
Yeah,
So when it comes to
some things
well,
won't
that
change.
right, exactly. So I just wanted to outline that. So what does this really mean? Well, then something happened on Earth, and I'll just do a side note of something my dad said recently, who's been adamantly against all this information and spirituality for a while. He
Hmm.
said to me, because I just have a new nephew right now. My sister just had a baby. So
Congratulations.
thank you. So my dad was like, "What came first, the baby or the human?" And I was like, "Good question." And he goes, "Well, think about it. If a baby came to Earth, babies are helpless. Who's gonna raise the baby?" So the only answer is we were put here from aliens or something, right? And this is the same guy that 4 or 5 years ago, when he realized I was doing a lot of stuff on UFOs and ETs, he shouted at me, "What's up with all this alien stuff?" He like
Your
was
dad did that.
extremely angry. We had a huge argument over it. So just this understanding of that, we shifted into this other being. So now we go into looking at the stories of ancient civilizations, and is there any evidence in these stories to suggest that there was some sort of interference on Earth? Okay.
Yes, that's the good part.
Right. All right. And so I want to start with talking about what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about the cosmic egg, the scientific and the metaphysical creation stories, which I have up on my computer. I want to read that to you
Mhm.
guys. And we'll
Yes.
start with that actually, just to show you the similarities here. Because creation stories, I did a presentation called Creation Stories of Ancient Civilizations, where I went through 300 origin stories of ancient civilizations and categorized them to show the similarities, and then combined them into one story to show, like, does this story kind of run the gamut of what really happened to us. So
Yeah.
within this, I came up with two examples: a prehistory and Earth history. We have origin stories and creation stories of prehistory, pre-Earth, before Earth even came about. You would see a story like a winged eagle flew through the space, through the skies, and as the eagle was flying, all of creation came out of its wings. Pre-Earth. You'd see an Earth story, Anunnaki story, things like that, of hybridization, things happening on the planet. But these two that I'm going to share with you right now, one is the mainstream scientific model, and one is the one within metaphysics. And these are prehistory examples. So the
Okay.
science one is cosmological models maintain that 13.8 billion years ago, the entire mass of the universe was compressed into a gravitational singularity, the so-called cosmic egg, from which it expanded to its current state following the Big Bang. So that's what we have accepted by the mainstream science. But just note that the word cosmic egg has been used here. Okay.
Yes.
And then within metaphysics, we have the cosmic egg represents potentiality. It is the pre creation held within the chaos, waiting to become the cosmos. This duality then sets up a conflict found throughout the world mythology, the duality of chaos, order, good, evil, light, dark, love, and hate. So both of these models are actually saying the exact same thing. But one thing's coming
Are.
specifically from a linear aspect of telling you what took place. The other thing is telling you the meaning behind what took place.
Yes.
Cosmological models maintain this many years ago, the entire mass of the universe was compressed into this singularity, and then there was a big bang. Well, what does big bang represent? A sound. Why is it called a big bang?
It's a
It's not.
frequency.
Yeah, it's a bang, a sound, a frequency came out. So our own mainstream model is talking about how we all came out of this vibration that was so compressed into singularity, it looked like a cosmic egg. And then what was that cosmic egg? Well, it represents potential, right? Because everything that has ever happened within all creation, within our universe, has came from that cosmic egg. So it represents infinite potential. It is pre-creation held within the chaos around it,
Well, you're
waiting to
talking
come
my
to life.
language. I understand this better.
Right.
That makes more sense to me. If all of our frequencies were together in singularity, which we came, and we're pretty powerful, maybe it would have a roar with it, a frequency. It would be pretty big, which is why
Yeah.
when I'm around other people like me, I have my frequency goes way up,
Hmm.
and it feels so good. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So we were all that one vibration. So something I like to say is like we're one frequency experiencing ourselves infinitely. You know, we're just one vibration split into multiple fractalizations of that one vibration. And that is pretty much another metaphor to explain the singularity becoming infinite potential. And, metaphysics, I like to call metaphysics metaphorical quantum physics, because quantum physics, you have oneness. Metaphysics, you have singularity. Quantum physics, you have force, and in metaphysics you have in quantum physics you have electromagnetic field. In metaphysics you have aura. You know what I'm saying? You have dimension in metaphysics. You have realm. Realm in metaphysics, dimensions in quantum physics. It's the exact same thing. Quantum physics is the linear masculine based energy. Not one's better than the other, just different ways of explaining. It's like mathematics, right? Quantum physics is mathematically, linearly what is exactly occurring, step by step instructions, directions. Then metaphysics is the metaphor behind it, the why you're taking that direction. Well, you're trying to get closer to source, of course, So it's the exact same thing, just explained differently. And then metaphysics, the language of metaphysics is music. Well, mathematics and music are the exact same thing, and the musical intervals are mathematical intervals. You know what I'm saying? So right now what I'm doing is basically just creating this foundation of the crossover between science, the new science of vibration, frequency, and the subatomic world, with the fact that this is just a new way of describing something that these ancient texts were talking about.
Well, you're a beautiful teacher, and I get it. Well, I wish I had you in math. When I would be in math or calculus or whatever growing up, I would want to know the why, and they wouldn't tell me the why. When I actually got into geometry, they would tell me the why, so I liked it.
I
Because
love that.
yeah, and I like
Oh,
sacred geometry now because I know it's not actually
that's great.
form; it's frequency. Who was it? Michael Tilton, who
Tellinger,
Tellinger, yeah, that did the experiments with
sound and water.
sound and water and the
Hmm.
frequency going into geometric or sacred
Right,
shapes.
right, right.
To me, that just that's evidence that absolutely blew me away. So
Exactly. Yeah.
so why are we here? What was the point of putting us on Earth?
Yeah.
And let's go into the juicy stuff. Our
Okay.
Starseed family. Why and why was it necessary up until this point to have duality, other than just learning from okay, that's good, that's bad, or that didn't work out. This does work out. What was the point?
Okay. Yeah, and I think that will be a good for this series here is to talk about singularity to duality, right? Because that's part of why we came here. A fractalization to this earth. So we'll talk about this. But I just want to also mention a second what you said about Tellinger, because he's a really good friend. We've done many events together, and so I've seen like so much of his presentations and research, and what he showed was sound was going faster than the speed of light in water,
It's
and
amazing.
this connects to the Big Bang and the singularity connecting, and how sound, creates it all. And even most ancient origin texts, stories, including the Old Testament, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. God representing the light, and then the word, the sound was even here before light. So it's like the frequency became the
Frequent.
light that became the visible way for us to perceive this holographic organic
Yeah.
experience of Earth, right?
Which is a lot what Tesla, he's becoming not only to me but others, but talking about frequency and light and our true state
Right.
and so forth and so on. This is the language that I hear a lot of times in my astral travel, because that's who we are. And yeah,
Yeah.
the you're talking about the also we're getting down to base elements like fire and the elements and water and the
Hmm.
frequency. And I have memory from being Arcturus and being in temples and being able to control things with that. And I think we've gotten so far away, we've gotten so far removed from the base of who we are that we've forgotten. So
Yeah.
how did all this take place? And then, it's going to take a while to probably get to the point as how we ended up here and what we need to
Right,
do.
right.
But keep going with the story. I don't know if it goes from Sumerians or where you want to take it, but
Okay.
go ahead.
So from what you're saying, a few things came to mind. Paradox is one thing that needs to be spoke about. And let's start with this: that if duality, was the separation of the light and the singularity, the cosmic egg duality, and the cosmic egg represents source, infinity, where we all came from. Basically God. Or connection to God, because it could be multiverses with different cosmic eggs that started creation, but they all connect to even more advanced cosmic brain or heart or something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So, but then if duality came from it, and the lower you get in duality, the more dense things become, right? Darkness isn't always good and evil in these dimensions. Challenges aren't always considered bad or even perceived the way we have them in this dimension. We've got down to a very dense 1, 2, 3, 4 dimensions of experience. Within this, duality has now eventually represented itself in what we call and we've dubbed as evil experiences, people, and things on Earth. However, singularity, the duality came from the singularity. So do you think that the singularity would judge half of itself over the other self more than the other?
No.
Well, that's not the case. So the singularity, source, God, conscious, the connection to source, has experienced itself into these fragmentations that it loves equally. So that gets into the question of what is the reason, what's the meaning for life, and why we're on this planet? Well, now we cut into the paradox. So there's two opposing, I guess, because it's paradoxical reasons we're here. One is the infinite singularity burst into duality because it wanted to experience itself infinitely and to know its true potential. So the original intention of Source was to experience everything that could be experienced, which doesn't just include light. It includes darkness, and includes density, and includes all the way down to this reality that we have now. So, Source is enjoying all the experiences and clocking it in. However, as we fractalized and started creating free will, different agendas, different beings, different harmonies, the universe tends to want to gravitate towards harmony. What is harmony? Well, it's not it's not the duality as we know on Earth. It's not evil as we know on Earth. It's balance. It's peace. It's unity. So a lot of the beings that then started getting created from this singularity burst started wanting to go back to a sense of harmony. Therefore, their agenda, the majority of the benevolent being agenda, is to create harmony in the universe. And since this is a free will universe, they've now given free range on many levels to be able to create that harmony. And now these beings happen to be a lot of the beings we see as gods and get the messages for on Earth, because the ones that visited here, they're the ones that send us messages. Syrians, Pleiadians, all these different beings, way beyond those, just the ones that we know, right, are sending signals and messages of empowerment because they want to create harmony on Earth. So if you go to original Source loves the way everything experiencing. I personally feel, my own belief is that because experience is the end game. This is why we're here, to experience. And now within that, we are creating harmony. So I just want to talk one more thing about the paradox, since we touched on it here. If you look at everything within the universe and quantum physics and everything, you see that the universe operates on a paradox. For example, physics, Newtonian physics, atoms, subatomic physics, subatomic particles, atoms, solid things, subatomic particles vibrating in and out of reality, just like a hologram, right? Every single millisecond, you're a completely new person. Question 1, why do I look the same every time? Question 2, if I have a sickness and disease, how come every time I vibrate in and out of reality, which we've proven now, that sickness is still here, right? And then question 3, why does the subatomic world physics become paradoxical to Newtonian physics, even though the subatomic world is what is the building blocks for the Newtonian world? How can the subatomic world be a paradox to the Newtonian world when it literally is the building blocks for all atoms? Well, what's happened is we've pierced through the veil. We're now realizing that the laws of physics that we have within this illusion that's been created aren't exactly what we always thought they are. So one of the reasons why I know that humans aren't at the level of consciousness we can get at is because the human mind is really unable to understand a paradox. How can this exist and not exist? How can the universe be infinite but also finite enough for other universes to exist without outside of it, right? As
Yes.
soon as we start accepting and not trying to figure out the paradox, this starts leading us to a level where we will be able to transcend and move into this next dimension. So yeah, I think that's where I want to leave it for this one, unless you have some more
Yeah.
questions. Yeah,
I just wanted to add to this and get your feedback, and then we'll close off on this
yeah,
segment. As far as I think so many people, because of the way they've been taught, that things are linear and that we're linear, and such as timelines. But the way I understand it, there's multiple timelines, there's multiple versions of ourselves. This is just the reality in which we're experiencing right now. But when we meditate or go into our astral state, there are other dimensions that we can travel and also coexist in. So, is this also what you're speaking about? Understanding the paradox, how can it be infinite, but then finite at the same time? And how can I see this here, but yet so much else is going on? So, it's the complexities of the intertwine with the other timelines and realities that I guess is confusing to, well, who
yeah.
am I now?
Yeah, that is definitely well. That's beyond even talking about the paradox, but there's a paradoxical element to it. A great example would be all time exists infinitely, yet we're incarnating and having past lives and future lives, or even when you pass away, there's this whole construct of this earthly experience that we get recycled into, and that we're basically until we transcend it. But at the same exact time, we're living simultaneous lives on other planets as different beings, and we're able to be in this body on Earth. And through dream state, you can actually go and visit and be at these places while you're on Earth,
Yeah.
and you can actually do that while you're still in these conscious and actually awake in waking life, and bring in those frequencies and tap into your other selves and bring it in here. So the intricacy of what is happening is so interesting, because the paradox is it's
Yeah.
just so simple. It's one frequency experiencing yourself infinitely. How simple is that? But within that there is all this complexity of what is going on all the time, and we can only perceive a certain frequency bandwidth, right?
Yes.
And but there's so much light and sound beyond that. So there is, my belief is that there's all these things, agendas, beliefs, experiments occurring on our existence that we can't even perceive. So yeah, the complexity of what's occurring seems to be huge.
And in order to perceive, you have to acknowledge that that there's a possibility that something is. And
Hmm.
once you've seen something, you can't unsee it, and then you can just keep, pulling the cord. I think the trick is eliminating the fear because it's not real,
Hmm.
and embracing the greatest journey you'll ever have is the one of self.
Mm.
So thank you for this segment today. And you really are a phenomenal teacher. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And everybody stay tuned for part 2 of our galactic history with Neil Gaur.
Thank you, everyone.
Please subscribe, like, and make comments, and support this channel by becoming a member. Thank you for your continued support.